Hello, Recapped Mystery here. Today, I'm going to explain a biography, drama film, Into the White. Watch out and take care. In Grotli, Norway, during World War II, a German aircraft is pursued and shot down by a British jet. 3 of the 4 officers survive the collision, including Lieutenant Horst Scopus, Wolfgang Strunk, and Joseph, albeit Joseph's arm is slightly injured. They decide to trek to the coast to rejoin their forces, but they are unable to get very far due to the snowstorm. They come upon an isolated wood cabin and decide to stay inside until the storm passes, after spending the night in a snow cave and resume their trek the next morning. They hear a voice and find 2 British soldiers walking to the cabin. As they settle in, they inform Scopus that their plane was shot down nearby and that they are looking for sanctuary. After a brief pause, Scopus welcomes them in, where the man introduces himself as Captain Davenport and his air gunner Robert Smith. They can't agree on anything because they're from opposing groups, and they start squabbling about where to sleep, but the fight ends when Scopus pulls out his gun and takes them as prisoners of war. He grabs a lighter from Davenport, who complains that it was a present from his father, but Scopus pledges to return it when they leave. He draws a line in the middle of the hut after explaining certain regulations to Davenport and Smith, roughly dividing the area into German and British regions. Although he forces them to obey his demands, he assures them that he will look after them and share whatever few resources they have. Strunk and Smith follow Scopus' directions and proceed in search of more firewood. While he tends to Joseph's damaged arm, Davenport tries to assist him, but he dismisses him and sends him back to his corner of the room, explaining that he is not permitted to cross the queue without his permission. After they prepare the muesli they found in the cabin, Scopus divides it evenly among them and gives Davenport and Smith their part. Davenport refuses to eat on the floor and insists on sitting at the table with them, and he follows his request by dragging the table over the queue. They begin dining together amicably, but this does not last long as Smith and Joseph argue over the food. After dinner, Scopus considers the situation and proposes that they stop arguing and work together, as it is the only way to survive in the wilderness. They put politics aside for a minute and begin talking about trivial issues at his suggestion. Smith tells them about her affair with the barman at the bottom, and she gives them a note in which she wishes him a safe return. He then inquires about Strunk, to which Scopus responds that he has a wife and 3 children waiting for him at home. He is also told that Strunk has a profitable family firm with over 2,000 employees but chose to volunteer in the military because the country needs him. The talk serves as an icebreaker, as they each share different incidents from their lives and get to know each other. Following his assistance with the dishes, Davenport tells Scopus to use the alcohol in his compass to prevent infection in Joseph's wound, and even assists them in reading the maps. The next morning, Scopus wakes everyone up and tells them they must continue their journey to the seaside because they only have a limited amount of food and firewood. Davenport proposes they split up, but Scopus refuses, claiming it's against the rules. It leads to another disagreement about who among the Germans and British is the greatest at obeying regulations, but they are once again compelled to settle it because they cannot exist without each other's assistance. They soon begin their adventure, but are forced to return to the cabin as they begin to lose sight of one another owing to a strong snowstorm. They begin cooking and eating moss to remain alive after running out of food. Scopus tries to deflect their attention at the table by asking Smith if he was truly a darts champion. As he claimed before, he decides to demonstrate his abilities to them by pressing various buttons on Joseph's coat. The game also pulls them closer together as they laugh at his joke on Joseph. While outdoors, Smith notices some reindeer and tries to alert others so they can track them down, but he misses his chance because they vanish before Davenport and Scopus arrive. He provokes Joseph after entering by telling him that he used the pages from his book as toilet paper. Despite Scopus's instruction to halt, Joseph points the gun towards Smith and threatens to shoot him. When Davenport notices this, he intervenes and begs him to obey his commander's orders and lower his rifle. Smith grabs a gun from the floor and holds Joseph hostage while forcing Scopus to drop his weapon. Finding them preoccupied by him, it alters the scenario, and Davenport compels them to relocate to their side of the cottage while assuming their positions. Later, they debate the effects of war with each other, and Smith inquires about Germany's invasion of various countries. He responds that, while it makes him sad, he must obey orders from his superiors. As Smith criticizes his country of stealing other people's land, Scopas compares it to the British, who did the same to India and their other colonies. He also reveals that the British Army wants to obtain Norwegian resources so that they may exploit the raw materials in their industries, which Davenport confirms. The scenario at the cottage worsens as they run out of firewood and begin burning other wooden items. Meanwhile, after discovering Strunk's diary, Smith learns about his passion for drawing and surreptitiously returns it to him. Strunk and Smith head off in pursuit of the reindeer Davenport noticed earlier, while he tells Scopas to take down the main beam of the cottage for firewood. Despite his disagreement, Scopas obeys the orders, but the plan backfires as the roof begins to collapse and they rush to stop it by stepping over the tables. The circumstance allows Scopas to obtain the rifle from Davenport, but it is ineffective because he is compelled to return to the table to prevent the roof from collapsing over their heads. As they stand there, Scopas has a moment of weakness and tells him that he considers himself a failure because he was engaged in a plane disaster earlier that killed 3 people, and now he is worried about Joseph because his wound is becoming worse. Outside, Smith spots and shoots a rabbit, which they bring back while happily conversing. Strunk swiftly returns and supports the roof with a temporary pillar. Smith discovers that the tables have flipped, as Davenport is now the prisoner and Scopas is holding the gun. Smith and Scopas point guns at each other, but both agree to a ceasefire until they can figure out how to get out of this problem. After storing their guns in a box outside the cabin, they shift their attention to the rabbit and prepare it for cooking in order to enjoy a proper supper. By this point, they have grown closer and assist each other in various chores, while the dividing line has been gone. When doctors notice Joseph's arm has become infected with gangrene, Davenport advises amputating it to save his life. Scopas tells them to collect wood from the walls and floors, boil water, and clean the axe after they have exhausted all other options. Strunk discovers a crate full of dried meat and liquid stashed beneath the floorboards while following the orders. They get Joseph inebriated and request that Scopas sever his arm, but he is unable to do so. Meanwhile, Joseph awakens and becomes concerned when he sees them gathered around him, but Smith knocks him down again, and Scopas reluctantly amputates his arm with the axe. Because they can't determine what to do with the arm, Scopas recommends wrapping it in something and burying it, followed by a little ceremony in Joseph's presence. Smith, who is already frustrated, disagrees and throws it outside in the dark. As the group has finally become friends, they spend the night playing games while Smith sings a song for them. Meanwhile, Norwegian soldiers prepare their next maneuver and begin marching towards their next objective. Scopas and Strunk perform their cultural dances in the cottage. On Davenport's turn, he discovers 4 hidden cigarettes and presents them to the group, explaining that he was keeping them until they reached the coast, but now is the perfect moment to use them. Later that night, Smith and Strunk have another profound talk in which Smith inquires about his preferred career if given the choice. Strunk believes he should concentrate on his duty to his country, but Smith advises him to do what makes him happy instead. Finally, as the weather improves, rescue crews locate the wreckage of their planes and begin hunting for survivors. Joseph awakens and is surprised to see his arm, but Scopas consoles him while explaining the circumstances and assuring him that they did it to save his life. They debate their future plans. Scopas believes they should split up, but Smith disagrees. He advises going to the hilltop to find the best way and then returning to the group to lead them, and Strunk agrees to accompany him. While Davenport and Scopas stay with Joseph, they prepare the skis they found in the cottage and continue their trek. They eventually make it to the top, where Strunk tells him that he has always wanted to be a painter but was afraid it would not pay enough. Smith, seeing his passion, advises he go to Paris and paint tourists, but he knows that won't be possible until the war is finished. After a while, they begin skiing down the hill, but Strunk is shot by Norwegian soldiers, who also arrest Smith. Smith then brings them back to the hut, where Scopas laments his soldier's death. The troops arrest the remainder of the party and prepare to take them back to the military camp after collecting Strunk's drawings from the cottage. When Smith and Davenport return to the camp, their superior questions them, believing they should have murdered the Germans rather than stayed with them. He also informs them that this act may be deemed treason because he fears they may have helped with the Germans. The conversation is cut short by the appearance of Scopas, who, as promised, returns Davenport's lighter, but Davenport cannot force himself to look at him. Following his departure, Davenport snaps at his senior, reminding him that they did not betray their country and were simply trying to live. Later, Scopas and Joseph are hauled away by boat, as Smith and Davenport stay at the wharf and exchange glances with them. Scopas and Joseph were sent to Canadian prison camps. It is learned Smith and Davenport returned to the fight, but were shot down in their next flight, costing Smith his life. In 1977, Scopas receives a phone call at his home in Munich. Davenport is the one who invites him to London, where the former enemies become friends. The end. Please subscribe to assist the channel, turn on notification and leave a like. Thank you for taking the time to watch. See you again soon.